Every serious poker player knows the statistics. We know the standard deviation, we know the bell curve, and we understand that variance is perfectly normal. But if it's so normal, why does it feel like physical assault? It's because our bodies are more honest instruments than any database we've ever owned. Long before we can even run the numbers, we're already feeling the resistance. It's a literal weight that you carry into a room. It's not that we're mentally failing in that situation, it's that we're hitting the wall of physics. In our previous sessions, we've explored how tit for tat can help us manage table predators and how the art of non contention makes us vanish from their radar completely. But what happens if we've cleared the table of external threats and found internal alignment, yet the deck still won't cooperate? Why does the downswing, or even just a bad session, leave us completely depleted even when we've executed the art perfectly? It's because variance isn't just a number on the spreadsheet. It is the manifestation of the second law of thermodynamics. In physics, there is a concept called entropy, the natural tendency of any complex system to move toward disorder and randomness. In this video, we aren't going to talk about bad luck. We are going to talk about the physics of the chaos. I will show you how the universe is actively trying to dissolve our bankrolls and why acceptance isn't just a coping mechanism. It's the strategic foundation of the sovereign player. It's time to stop fighting the riptide and start understanding the current. Before we can talk about the disorder, we have to understand the constraints. Thermodynamics is the study of energy, governed by two primary laws that dictate everything from the life of a star to the life of our bankrolls. The first law is the law of conservation. It states that energy cannot be destroyed or created, it can only be transformed. It's the ultimate no free lunch policy. We have a very limited amount of fuel: metabolic, strategic, emotional. We can move it around, but we can't conjure more up out of thin air. The second law is where the problem starts. If the first law says you can't get something for nothing, the second law says you can't even break even. It introduces entropy. Rudolf Clausius realized that when we transform energy, the transfer is never perfect. There's always a percentage that leaks out as wasted heat. It becomes disorganized and useless. That is why a processor runs hot and our brains feel fried after a long session. That heat is the tax of existence. Entropy is the mathematical measure of this disorder. The second law states that in any given system, entropy never goes down, it only increases. Order is a temporary state that requires constant work to maintain. The destination is disorder. Let's take an egg, for example. To create the egg, a chicken had to consume energy and do work to organize the calcium and the proteins into the specific low entropy shape. It took effort. But to break it, that takes zero effort. And the most important thing, you cannot unbreak it. The universe only works in one direction, from the organized egg to the messy puddle on the floor. In the context of poker, our A game is the whole egg. It is a highly organized, low entropy state of mind. The chaos, the variance, the tilt is the puddle. And the second law is the physical force that keeps trying to push our eggs off the table. This movement from order to disorder isn't just a concept for the textbooks. It is the reality of our biology. Our brains are the most energy expensive organs that we own. When we are in a state of deep focus, calibrating ranges, reading tells, maintaining composure, we are performing massive amounts of work just to keep our systems in a low entropy state. We are basically holding the egg together. But because of the second law, that transfer of energy is never perfect. Every high level decision that we make generates waste heat in the form of cognitive fatigue. And the more interference there is, the more anxious we are about our bankroll, or the more tilted we are because of a bad beat, the more energy leaks out. We pay a heat tax on every thought. Most players react to the chaos by trying to outwork it. They think that by doubling their intensity, they can somehow force the universe back into order. But in thermodynamics, if we increase the work in a high resistance system, we do not effectively get more output. We just generate more heat. This is literally how burnout happens. We are redlining our internal circuitry to fight the inevitable randomness of the deck. And we're paying for it with a physiological currency that we're not going to get back. We aren't just losing chips. We are physically degrading the ability to maintain the egg, aka our A game, together. Eventually, the heat becomes too much. The system fails, and we reach heat death. When we talk about a downswing, we usually treat variance as a glitch in the matrix. But through the lens of physics, a downswing is simply a period of high entropy. The universe is tilting the board towards the puddle. It is during these stretches that the randomness of the deck is at its peak. In a low entropy run, heater, everything is aligned. Our plus EV decisions result in plus EV outcomes. The system is efficient. But when the disorder arrives, the resistance increases. Suddenly, we get less output for the same input. This is where the trap is set. Since the second law dictates that the mess is the default, fighting a downswing through raw force is the equivalent of trying to stop a landslide by screaming at the rocks. And on top of that, every time we fight, we increase our internal friction. Now we're paying the heat tax twice. Once to the universe in the form of variance, and another time to our metabolic system through stress. This is how the universe wants us to go broke. It's not a conscious desire. It's just the physics. The universe will provide the chaos no matter what we do. But if we provide additional friction, we will eventually run out of the fuel that we need to keep the eggs off the floor. A downswing is a thermodynamic drain designed to exhaust our resources until we no longer have the energy to remain sovereign. To understand why a downswing is so heavy, we have to look at the math of the disorder. In thermodynamics, entropy isn't a vibe. It's the calculation of probability. Take a standard 52 card deck. There's only one way for those cards to be in a perfect factory sealed order. But the number of ways those same cards can be disorganized is 8 times 10 to the power of 67. That is an 8 followed by 67 zeros. This is the invisible opponent. When we sit down at a table, we're trying to maintain a very specific low entropy strategy. We're looking for a very narrow set of outcomes that lead to profit. But the universe has 8 times 10 to the power of 67, minus a few ways that work out for us, ways to tilt the board toward the puddle. Statistically, chaos is the most likely outcome. Variance isn't the deck acting up. It's a deck returning to its most probable state of disorder. This is why a heater feels so fragile and a downswing feels so massive. But the universe isn't picking on us. It's just that there are trillions of more ways for things to go wrong than to go right. When chaos arrives, it's not the anomaly, it's the math finally catching up to the room. Think about that number. There are more ways to arrange a deck than there are atoms on Earth. When we sit down at a table to play a professional strategy, we're seeking to carve a very narrow, very specific path through that mountain of chaos. By using logic and intuition, we're trying to find the few configurations that lead to positive expectation. In physics, a state of order is always the anomaly. The mess is the baseline. That is why winning feels like such a grind. We're not only playing cards, we're fighting a constant uphill battle against the sheer mathematical weight of the universe's preference for disorder. Most people expect to win. They think losing is the deviation. According to physics, the opposite is true. Losing, dissipating our bankrolls into the high entropy environment of the casino, is what happens if we do nothing. We have to be more organized than the chaos and more efficient than the friction. Preferably, we also don't cause more friction to our internal systems. We have to maintain the egg as the universe is actively trying to turn everything into a puddle. Winning isn't a right. Winning isn't normal. Winning is the temporary, local reversal of the second law of thermodynamics. And that is why it costs so much. Now, understanding the physics doesn't mean that downswings stop hurting. I've spent my life studying systems and statistics, and I can tell you, the pain of the mess is still real. It is a physiological reaction to our environment becoming high friction. When we're in a downswing, we're a complex architecture running through a sandstorm. Every piece of our internal circuitry is being ground down by randomness. It is exhausting. The reason the super pros look so indifferent isn't because they're not feeling the heat. They're not automatons or practicing some perfect stoicism that deletes their humanity. They feel the sting just as much, but they understand that the pain is just a signal on the dashboard. It tells them that the core is running hot, but it's not in order to drive the car off a cliff. They hear the warning, acknowledge the resistance, but keep their hands steady on the wheel. In a future video, I'll show you why even that indifference is a bit of a lie. Suckouts don't hurt because we're weak. Suckouts hurt because our brain has already pocketed the chips based on expected value before the hand is over. We'll dismantle that biological accounting error later. But for now, remember this hard truth. In a high entropy universe, winning is the anomaly. We don't live off this game by beating the second law of thermodynamics. That's impossible. We live off it by becoming the most efficient processors in the room. As professionals, we survive by being the only ones not vibrating with the static of the chaos. We don't pay a self-inflicted leak on top of the universal one. We accept that variance is a thermodynamic drain, and we stop trying to fix a physical law. The alleviation of the pain doesn't come from the variance stopping. It comes from the relief of no longer having to solve the universe. Our A game isn't a shield that protects us from the mess. It is the high efficiency vessel that helps us navigate through it. We're allowed to feel the heat, quite normal. We just can't afford to let it melt the machine. Whether we are navigating a poker downswing or a different area of our lives, remember that we're operating in a structure that is designed to trend towards disorder. The order, our internal quiet, is a fragile thing, but this one's our thing. It's the only part of the game within our control. And don't just protect it, live there. In a world of people melting under the pressure of the mess, sovereignty belongs to the ones who have stopped fighting the physics and started enjoying the ride.